Hello again to the non-dual lectionary for this week, which is the seventh Sunday after Epiphany. We've got a really good one, really deep. I will try not to take up too much time, but I also want to hit some good highlights here. So, the gospel lesson for this week is Luke chapter 6, verses 27 through 38. It's the continuation from last week, the Sermon on the Plain. Uh, Actually, kind of in the news lately too. I'm recording this in 2025, and the vice president has pushed back on social media against some people talking about loving your neighbor and your enemies, and asserting that we need to prioritize family and the neighbors close to you. Um, but let's take a look at what this says, and maybe reference that briefly. But I think we can go much, much, much deeper. So first, love for enemies. But I say to you who are listening, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, bless those who curse you, pray for those who mistreat you. If anyone strikes you on the cheek, offer the other also, and from anyone who takes away your coat, do not withhold even your shirt. Give to everyone who asks of you, and if anyone takes away what is yours, do not ask for it back again. Do to others as you would have them do to you. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners love those who love them. If you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? For even sinners do the same. If you lend to those from whom you expect to receive payment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners to receive as much again. Instead, love your enemies, do good, and lend, expecting nothing in return. Your reward will be great, and you will be children of the Most High, for he himself is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back. Wow. So again, a lot we could talk about with this. And let's start just briefly on that kind of surface level. If you've been in church, you've heard this preached upon. People will talk about God's economy and flipped upside down and a challenge to us and all that. And that's good stuff. I think this is one of the spots where uh, the the Christian scriptures, the Jesus story, um, gives us something maybe a little bit different than we might find in the other wisdom traditions, because there is, I will, we'll get to this, but I think there is a clear non-dual teaching, a no self teaching, true self-teaching in here, but also it blends directly into uh, action in the world, right? The Jesus story is not just someone who had the realization, the recognition, and became a teacher to give it to others. It is that, but it's also someone who then lived in the world, manifesting that in a particular context, in a particular political climate, in a particular culture. But we see a lot in the Jesus story. Again, more so than in some of the other traditions. I mean, we could go back and forth about particular things in there, but um, that manifestation, what it really looks like to live this out. So the first part up here, let's talk about the living out part a little bit, right? I don't think this is, I don't think you can read this the way some do of, oh, this isn't really what he means. This isn't something, no, of course you have to prioritize the people close to you and your family first and protect against others. It's not what this says. It's just not. And we can talk about why, and I'm about to a little, but it's not. There's a challenge here. There's a big challenge. It's a challenge to the ego. The challenge to the ego here, right, is this is not what my ego self wants to do. This is not what it is at all. And that's where the word sinners comes in the second paragraph here, I think. The ego loves those who love them. The ego does good to those who do good to you. The sinner here is the ego. The ego, the one who, and Richard Rohr uses this formulation often, that sin means separation. I think that's a good useful one here. The separate self. Sinners are those who are in their separate self in this passage at least. I think that unlocks a key here. So it's a challenge to the ego. I'll go even further. It's something the ego can't do. The ego cannot extend love to enemies, not fully. It can't do good though to those that hate you, not fully. It can't bless those who curse you, not fully. It can't give to everyone, even those that take from them, all that they've given. It can't. And as an ego development teaching, like to children, this is probably bad advice. I was one who took it that way. I was one who grew up in a church setting and heard this and said, that's who I'm supposed to be. And didn't set up appropriate boundaries, didn't push back when appropriate as a result. I don't think that's a good ego development teaching. And the ego development, we can get into that too, but I think it's actually important before transcending, before moving past the ego, to kind of develop a healthy one first. So then what's going on here then? If this isn't something the ego can do, I think it harkens back again to something we've talked about evoking. This is I will assert this is these are practical messages that can be done, but not by trying. And Alan Watts is pretty good about this. This is something where by trying, by engaging the ego to try to achieve these goals that Jesus lays out here, we will fail. We will absolutely fail. But the failure is part of the point. It doesn't mean stop. It doesn't mean that this isn't a worthwhile thing to do. It means uh, we will realize the limitations of our ego self because the only part of ourselves that can do this is the part that already does it. It's the Father within. It's uh, it's down here. You're rewardably great. You will be children of the Most High, for He Himself is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. And pardon the gendered language, as Jim Finley says, they didn't know better. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. The indwelling Father, the indwelling Spirit, the non-dual recognition of who we already are is already merciful. It already embraces all, including perceived enemies, including the people who take from us, including everything that my ego doesn't like already. The indwelling recognition, non-dual recognition of my true nature accepts all of that as it is, because that is what it does. Love your enemies, do good, and lend, expecting nothing in return is a message to the ego to align with the true self. It's evoking the true self to align with the ego. And align here meaning to blend, right? To mix in, to become more of the organizing principle of my life, of your life, than the ego self principle. But it can't be done by the ego. And this is so it's not again not worth trying, but it's something that can be done, but not by trying. But sometimes trying and failing is the only way there. Oh, just wonderful stuff. And then we get to the end here, the judging others. And it's partly the same thing, but I do want us to make a special note of that. Do not judge, you will not be judged. Do not condemn, you won't be condemned. Again, partly the same message, right? Um, but judgment and condemnation here being particular tools of the ego, right? To continue to maintain separation. Um, if as long as I keep operating through the world in terms of my preferences, in terms of what is good and bad, what I like, what I don't like, separating all of that. That's all in the mind. That's all things, um, not accepting what is as is. The true self-recognition within takes in the good and the bad equally. It takes in what I judge to be things I like and things I don't like equally. They both show up, whether I like it or not. They show up equally, whether I like it or not. My awareness, my consciousness takes them in, allows them to be equally, whether I like it or not. And so again, I think this is, um, uh, all of these are like hitting at particular things that the ego might want to hold on to. things that the ego may want to operate on. And Jesus like undoing that, right? Going straight at it and saying, nope, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And again, can our ego do that? No, but it's evoking the part of us that is already doing it. And then a good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back. That's to me, that's like a hint that and the do to others what you would have them do to you. That's something the ego can take in, right? And says, "Ooh, I like that one. I'll get something back for myself." And that to me is uh is part of um the doorways I like. Like the things that bring you into the practice, the things that say, "Okay, I hear that, my ego hears that, I hear that, and I like that. I want to dig in." And so then I'm a little hooked and I start engaging the practice and I start engaging in let's undo this. I'm going to do the other practices. I'm not going to judge. I'm going to operate in the world in this way. It's going to start to undo that very thing that wanted the thing to begin with. And it's going to realize, oh, wait, what I wanted isn't what I'm going to get, but what I'm going to get is something greater even. It's going to run over and fall into my lap. So just a beautiful, I think, again, in that mythological context, that's always a little different from ours. Not as direct a teaching as you find in some of the other traditions, especially from more modern teachers. But once we start to peel back the layers a little bit, just a beautiful teaching here. Something that really gets at the core of who we are and what is and what already is, but also what we can discover to be what is.